Welcome to Traces of Trauma, where we explore the quiet echoes that trauma leaves behind and the gentle path of healing. I'm your host, Brian Arbor, inviting you to join me in conversations that honor our stories, our struggles, and the strength and grace it takes to move forward. This is a safe space to listen, reflect, and connect in the shared journey beyond our trauma. Welcome back, everybody. With me today is Dr. Fred Moss. I met Dr. Fred probably, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 years ago, something like that. Um, and we just clicked. And my first memory of Dr. Fred is how extraordinary it was to be a psychiatrist who was committed to a non-diagnosing, non-medicating model. And it got me curious. And at that point, I was very much convinced that I did not want to be diagnosed and I did not want to be medicated. And I've since changed my personal stance. But it's led to some really rich conversations. So I'm excited for you to be here today. And I don't know, what would you like to say to introduce yourself and kind of set the stage?
Yeah, thank you. So it's great to be with you, Brian. And you're right. The click was immediate. I remember it as well. And I've always loved talking to you. I've always been deeply curious about what it is that you're up to and how you're thinking and how you're behaving and how you're responding to this crazy world that we both and all of us live in. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. You know, I noticed in your introduction, you put the words trauma is a sort of the front edge of what we're doing here is taking traces of trauma. And a couple of the adjectives you used were the word quiet and then gentle and then safe. And, you know, these are words that don't necessarily immediately get thought of as associated with the word trauma. But when you're talking about recovery or talking about restabilization or reoptimization, it seems that these are pursuits that require a fair amount of quiet, a fair amount of gentle, and a fair amount of safe. And so I'm looking forward to having this. This is how I see you. You know, how I see you is one who represents quiet, gentle, and safe. And so I'm eager to take on whatever it is we have to talk about in the mental health field or in our personal life or whatever else comes up inside of what's going on out here in the communal collective and what's going on out here in our community or in our families or in society or in the enterprise or whatever it is that you want to talk about. I'm open to talk about it all.
Sure. Well, gosh, I mean, it sounds like we should probably have a series of episodes with you. um, what would you most love to dig into today? Is it your personal story, your professional, like you want to function as a professional in this space today?
Yeah. So it's never, there's not much of a bridge between my personal and my professional. And I've made it my business for the last 20 years to at least create a lifestyle that allows me to be me in all situations and not have to wear the Dr. Moss or the Dr. Fred hat, like that comes with a certain persona that the public or others expect me to show up as. I need to monitor my speech pattern. I need to choose my vocabulary. I need to look a certain way. I need to carry myself in a certain style when I take on some sort of title, arbitrary as it is, after all. You know, yes, there were a number of years that went into pursuing the idea of that there would be a piece of paper or a legal representation that I had earned a degree as a medical doctor, which did take place many, many, many years ago. That degree was obtained. I graduated medical school in 1988 and then finished a residency as a psychiatrist and then finished a fellowship as a child and adolescent psychiatrist. And since then, as I think you know, I've worked in every single modality that I believe exists inside of Western medicine where psychiatry has an impact. I'm pretty positive I have had a leadership role in every single modality that exists inside of that domain. And, you know, Look, I'm not saying that to brag. Actually, when I look back at how did my resume become so astonishing, it's because I left a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
I left a lot of jobs, and that's how a resume grows to be expansive. Um, I've been a psychiatrist the whole time. That's true. As soon as you get your degree, it's sort of like it's an irrevocable truth that I'm a psychiatrist. And so I've been a psychiatrist even when I was doing other jobs that had nothing to do with psychiatry. But, when I walk into a room and I realize there's this extra sort of respect or reverence or maybe irreverence or disrespect that happens in the world of me being Dr. Moss, when I drop my two initials into any conversation, those being M and D, a new floor, a new a podium of respect seems to take place for me immediately. Like I have the floor, it's mine to own. What I have to say, people are going to be curious about. I'm not so sure that would be the case if I didn't have an MD after I name it. So in some ways, I pivot around my MD. And by being simply a natural, looking forward to being just a homie, just a friend, just a brother, just a citizen, just a father, just a man, just an American, just a world citizen. That seems to be a juxtaposition that leaves me appearing to be interesting. Like because I'm a doctor, somehow that gave me license to separate myself from all these other interfaces that are much more natural and true than whether or not I am a specialized healer. Now, I think I am a specialized healer, but I'm not a specialized healer because I went to medical school. Medical school did not even move along the notion of me being a healer, other than giving me a title that could then meet the criteria for the agreement reality that I was now an educated professional. But being an educated professional didn't, in fact, make me in any way a better healer or a more appropriate healer, or even a healer worth counting on more. Nevertheless, that's the expression or that's the impression that the world has gotten when someone graduated specifically from an American medical school. So I didn't just graduate from American medical school. I graduated from a top-notch American medical school at Northwestern University down in downtown Chicago. And, I have these accolades now. I have this piece of paper that I can wave around and sort of get myself into the front edge of a conversation if that's where I want to be, simply by wielding that particular piece of paper. What's really interesting, however, is that my growth and development doesn't come from being an MD, although it comes, in fact, as an MD. That's so I was already an MD once I began to grow and develop formally inside of all of my studies and pursuits. But it's not because I'm an MD that I've learned how to do these things well. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Fred, because one of the things people bump into is, there are lots of professionals out there. There are lots of people in the healing industry, whether they're therapists or massage therapists or chiropractors or like whatever, that deal with people's wellness. And often, especially folks who are dealing with lingering effects of trauma, we find that those professionals aren't a good match for our individual needs. So that you say it wasn't medical school that made you an MD, that made you a healer. They gave you a certificate, but it didn't make you the one who's engaged in healing work, right? What is that? Like, and how do we find somebody who's not only a licensed professional with a plaque on the wall, but also really a healer with the space and the wisdom available to meet those of us who are dealing with trauma where we are, as unique as that position might be to each person, and help us work through whatever needs worked through.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a very interesting question. And even as you post it, as I find myself listening intently to the word choices you're using, you know, your first criteria was a licensed professional. And most of my work these days is really pointing towards the notion that you don't have to be a licensed professional in order to be an extraordinary healer.
Mm.
It's just not a requirement. That's been shoved at us. That's been programmed in us that you need, if you're really sick or if you're really out of balance, if you're truly uncomfortable, if you've been, in fact, like profoundly traumatized, then you better actually seek a licensed professional.
Mhm.
Like somehow that's a requirement. Like we're gonna pigeonhole who's out there for you. We're gonna create a little subset of people that you should pursue or consider pursuing inside of the licensed professional genre. And I really wonder whether that requirement is confusing, as it turns out, because what you're really looking for from where healing comes has zero to do, zero, like a straight bagel to do with whether or not the person you heal with has a certificate in some way, shape, or form. In fact, that level of healing can take place with your next door neighbor, can take place with your brother or sister, can take place with a colleague, can take place with a support group member, can take place with a friend or even the cashier or the Uber driver. And, you kind of know that. I know that you're working at Starbucks these days. And I too am, by the way, extremely, I think I may have had this in passing, this conversation with you in passing. One of my highest dreams that I've been floating around over many years, and anyone who knows me knows that I have this little strange fantasy that sits out there, is to purchase, own, or become the CEO or the manager of a coffee shop in like Copenhagen. That's what I want to do. That's when I know I will have arrived, when I have my coffee shop in Copenhagen. And now what's happening these days is that there's a coffee shop open and for sale actually in Nevada City, which is about 3 miles away. And Alex and I are looking at it as a possible purchase for real so that I can finally get in a coffee shop. You know what my purpose is for coming into that coffee shop?
What's that?
Healing.
Say more about that.
That's where healing is going to take place.
Yeah.
That's where those conversations are going to take place. That's where transformation is going to take place. We promote an open discourse. We promote even disagreement being welcome, but disrespect being prohibited. We promote like a really good cup of coffee or a really good cup of whatever it is that you're drinking, and maybe a pastry or some fun eats, and creating an environment where interchange, where open and honest, true, real, genuine, authentic interchange is what's promoted. If I open a coffee shop, it's not to run away from my job as a doctor. It's actually to land in a place where I can be effective as a healer.
Yeah.
And creating a community and being part of a community and perhaps even leading a community and bringing in other leaders for appropriate conversations. Look, it is tough being human. It is tough being human. Those of us who have been traumatized in an extreme degree take on some notion that it's tougher when you've been traumatized even more.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not positive of the math on that, by the way. I'm not positive. Your greatest trauma is the one, I forgot how you put it in our last conversation. Something like whatever your level of trauma is, that is your greatest trauma, is the most extreme trauma and is experienced as such, even if it isn't, watching your battalion die in front of you in the demilitarized zone. It's not the only place for which trauma can take place.
Yeah.
I believe that inside of conversation and connection and human communication is the heart of all healing. And that, compassion and courage and creativity are components of that as well. And the coffee shop's intention, called Dr. Coffee, or maybe even undoctor coffee, we're not even sure about that, would be create an open and honest, gentle, quiet, safe space to heal from all of our personal and collective traumas.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I don't know that I have shared this with you, Fred, but when I came back from Iraq in 2004, I sat at home and gained a bunch of weight. and blew all my money on things that I thought would make me comfortable and happy. And when I couldn't stand myself anymore, uh, I knew I had to do something. Like I had to get out of the house. I couldn't just sit in my pajamas and watch TV and play Xbox all day. I had to go do something. Um, and I didn't want to deal with people. I didn't want to deal with the world. I didn't want to engage in the discourse that was common uh, post 9/11 and everybody being a hyper patriot and having some sense of how great this war on terror is. It all made me want to punch everything in the face. And where I went was Starbucks.
Yeah.
Um, it was a place where I could deal with people 3 minutes at a time
Yeah.
across a dividing counter and like reacclimate to engaging with people.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, healing can happen with your neighbor, it can happen with a family member, it can happen with a friend, it could happen in a coffee shop. Um, there is something about when we're committed to healing, we can go find healing. We can go create micro uh, moments where those little steps happen. Um, and it's not like, because I have trauma and I have a neighbor, my neighbor should be able to like support my healing, right? Some of us don't have those kind of neighbors. Uh, um, some of us don't have those kind of families. Some of us don't even have those kind of friends. So it does take something to like engage in an interaction or to find somebody who you can regularly engage in interactions with that lend themselves toward like shining some light in those dark places, like airing out that whatever it is that is like sitting inside us rotting and like actually start to clean it up and like restore those things that were damaged. Um, there was another thing you said that I can't remember at the moment.
It's okay.
Oh, that it doesn't take a licensed professional, right? And kind of how that ties into finding the right kind of person who can be that like not licensed professional. There's not everybody develops wisdom when they go through trials. Um, and so there's that to contend with. But then there's also the accessibility to um, like healing processes. Like not everybody has even any cause to be interested in what does healing look like.
I'm not sure about that, but I hear you.
And, fair. There are things that I learned from a therapist that I'd never heard anywhere else.
Hmm.
So I wonder like how accessible the processes that one might encounter in therapy are. Like how does someone learn those steps
Yeah.
without necessarily having to turn to a licensed professional and engaging in like the Western medical complex, insurance, and all the stuff.
Authorizations and money and copays and the whole thing. Well, many things you said here are very interesting. Yes, that therapist might have said something to you that you never have heard and haven't heard since, but so might have been the Kroger cashier who might have said something to you that you never heard and never would hear again. So it's entirely to equate the idea that a therapist, someone who is embedded in the actual system and maybe enough offshoot or enough human to relate to their human self such that they can gather what's going on with you or the client, patient, customer, enough to connect on a human level, then apply something from some form of formalized therapy designed for licensed professionals to learn, whether it comes from one of the alphabet soups of, DBT or CBT or whatever else is going on there, EMDR, all those things. There's an assumption there that material is somehow more valid and more valuable than the material that could have come out of an exchange with the Uber driver. It's entirely possible that the exchange with the Uber driver could have changed your life in an even greater way than many weeks sitting with a super well-known, well-credentialed professional. And so I have it, the small steps said, well, you had said that if you go, that if you go outside of the general professional area and you go to the Uber driver or to your neighbor or to your friend or to your sister or something like this, you might be able to take small steps. Again, there's an implication there that the big steps are the ones that are taken with true and honest professionals. I'm not so sure of that. I'm just not entirely certain that I know for me that if I open up my eyes and open up my ears and open up my, processing capacity, that the interchanges that are the most powerful and impactful that I've ever had are not with professionals. They're just with people who get me and who I can get. They're just with people that I connect with. And in that act of connection, by the way, and that's another thing that you're speaking to, one can process one's trauma without speaking directly about the actual trauma. That is, in the act of love, in the act of human connection, in the act of resonating harmonically with another person, that experience washes over without the need to go in to the details of the car crash.
Mm-hmm.
It is entirely possible, therefore, to heal from that, we'll call it a car crash, of course, it comes in many flavors for all of the listeners and for you in particular, but I'm going to hope that you allow me to wax poetically there.
Sure.
One can heal from a car crash without ever even telling the other person that you are in a freaking car crash. Like, it's not critical necessarily to go back and take out the catharsis component of this and have that be a source of healing. That theory is a theory that was really just truly initiated in the early 20th century. And it's not necessarily the only way to healing. And in my experience, it's not even the way of healing. So in my experience in institutions, for instance, and the ones that come to mind are I've worked in 3 maximum security prisons here in California. And I suppose countless, I don't know how many inpatient units, many, I'm not sure how many. They're all the same, though. They all look the same. So there's enough similarity between those 2 institutions and every institution inside of both of those categories to have it be that they're similar enough. I don't need to know the trauma that led to those people being in that hospital. I really don't. I just need to connect with them. And when I connect with them in ways that perhaps are so profound that they've never had anybody have the courage to actually step down or up or next to their level, it is Christmas. It is that moment of ecstasy that can take place upon connecting. A bilateral or even multilateral experience of healing takes place at that moment. And that level of healing actually heals the traumas that led up till that moment. Now, is there a permanence to it? I don't know. You have to keep doing the work. It's a mountain with no top. I'm good with that. It actually is a mountain with no top. That's what I'm not been there, done that. I woke up this morning a little bit out of sorts. Like, how did I get on this silly track? This is not the track I said I'm on. This is not the track to success and abundance. This is a track to failure and scarcity. Like, when did I take this turn in the road? And I get to deal with my own humanity and step into my own healing, because what's really happening is that these are unresolved childhood traumas of my own that are guiding me down these roads. and inviting me to go into dark areas for which perhaps the pay dirt doesn't really exist at the end of the tunnel. And
Yeah.
when that's the case, connecting with another, and yeah, Alexandra, I woke up this morning with Alexandra. She knew that I was a little bit out of sorts. It's like, okay, what the hell is today bringing? What am I doing anyway? Oh, I got this talk with Brian at 8:30. She's like, super cool. And that's what I'm like, yeah, it's super cool because Brian can actually hear all this, be with all this, and we will have an extraordinary interchange this morning because of the fact that I'm teetering on out of sorts.
Yeah. There's some of those really big healings for sure in my journey didn't come from reliving the event, right? There's something to be said for like cracking something so that it can be reset.
Yes.
But that's not the bulk of the work. The bulk of the work is all those traces, all that webbing of impact, like the strange ways that this thing still freaking echoes, and finding those rough patches and smoothing them over with some compassion and some grace, rather than trying to napalm the trauma out of our systems. And for sure, one of the common indicators of trauma is wanting and to latch on to an ultimate solution. Like therapy isn't a one and done, like everything gets resolved if you spend enough time with a therapist. It doesn't work that way. Nor is stepping into some community of personal development, nor is connecting with people in your coffee shop, nor is the relief that you might find in like psychedelics or meditation. And it's so funny because you point toward walking, just that there's healing available in just being in the world among people and forging connections. And those connections are what I find are mostly missing. When I step out into the world, I'm automatically, like unconsciously even, dissociated. I'm not present to that person who walks that dog on this sidewalk in my neighborhood, multiple times a day, every day. It all becomes invisible because I'm out here to try and get done what I need to get done and get back into my safe place. And I don't even think that way consciously, but I don't look at my grocery checker person as a human being that I could connect with. I don't look at the person behind me in the line at the grocery store as a person who, like, maybe I could say there's even just thinking about it, there's like a building of terror in my chest. Like, what if I say the wrong thing? What if they're not like, oh, I could all explode? There's we tend to wall ourselves off, lose those opportunities. And there is some risk in becoming connected with the people around us that make up our world. And it's that connection that provides those opportunities for real healing. And honestly, I mean, I've had therapists that I didn't connect with and I stayed because they're the one that my insurance designated. And I got some value, but like it sucked. It sucked real bad. And I didn't feel like I came out of it a whole lot better. And I have to learn to listen to those instincts again.
Well, let's look at a couple things here. Thank you for that. I totally hear what you're saying. Let's look at a couple things, because earlier you had said something about how when you came out, you didn't want to deal with people. And here you're talking about, the cashier or the person behind you don't get the, the glory of even being considered a human with their own issues. And we wall ourselves off and keep ourselves partitioned from creating these so-called connections with the world around us, the people who are circulating in similar proximity to us. And we wall ourselves off, especially post-traumatically, like from a functional freeze standpoint.
Yeah.
We get to a space where we feel justified in getting that person over there that hasn't yet reached the status of being a person in my head. I'm just trying to get through my freaking day. Thank you very much. But I got stuff to do so I can get back to my home safe place. I think that there's something here that you're not, one is not, correct me if I'm wrong, because I think I'm paraphrasing something you're saying, and I need your alignment if we're going to talk about this. It's not that you don't want to deal with people. It's that you don't want to deal with people and fail. You don't want to, it's not the dealing with people that's the problem. It's the risk that these people, like you thought, might actually have you say something wrong, or might actually by mistake hurt them, or you might get hurt by them, or it might not work out well. So it's not dealing with people that's the problem. It's dealing with people and then getting an undesirable outcome.
Yeah.
That's what you're afraid of. You're not. So on the front, we equate that to, I don't want to deal with people. But the second clause of that is because it's probably not going to work.
Yeah. And the trauma ratchets up the expectation or the prediction of all the ways that this thing could blow up, all the ways that this thing could go sideways that I need to avoid. And I'm so preoccupied with avoiding all the ways that this interaction could go wrong. There isn't a default sense of how to forge an interaction that goes really great.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look at this, Brian. I'm going to go out here. This is sensitive material for a podcast, but let's get it done anyway. I trust that the two of us can do this. In NLP, there's this notion of you cannot not communicate, right? It's one.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a cool notion. That's really cool. One cannot not communicate. So there's a space here in getting that, even in a disconnected form, even in one where you're totally walled up around the world around you, or interfacing with the world around you, that in fact, that is a form of connection. It is a form of being connected to your non-connection about the world that's here around us.
Yeah.
Willing to roll with that for a moment?
Sure. I mean, all those people around me, it's not like I'm not there.
Exactly.
If they want to connect, they're bumping into my wall.
Yeah.
If it's not like my experience is isolated in a vacuum. There's everybody who bumps into whatever this little fortress of mine is.
Yeah.
And that's the relationship they get to have with.
And I wonder, even though the perceived desire would be to be able to sit down with somebody who's enjoying life at about the level that you're enjoying it, or at least at a level that you're aspiring to enjoy it in any given moment, that somehow that's the best conditions for healing. But one could also get that this scenario that you're describing could also be fertile ground for healing in its own right. That in fact, healing in its own right, in the face of feeling disconnected from the world around you, is just another form of acknowledging the connection quality of what you have. And disconnected becomes a perception, a self-perceived notion that you're disconnected becomes sort of the connection domain, right? Like I'm connected to people by not being connected to them. Something like this. And I wonder if healing is still offered as a possibility in that setting. Why? Because healing is truly an inside job. It truly is. These events, these traumas, these unresolved childhood traumas that, Gabor Mate speaks about and many others, Bessel van der Kolk, et cetera, are they're not happening anymore. They're not happening anymore. They're really not. They're not. This is a mind cluster. This is this idea that we're still responding to them is a function simply of neural pathway mind cluster messes.
Yep.
These are no longer occurring in most cases. Now, if they are, with all due respect, it's a whole different game. And for anyone who's listening, who's going through trauma today, right now, this moment, please disregard what I just said. It's not, this conversation wasn't intended for you. But in many cases, it's the response or the reaction or the integration efforts of the trauma, like how to incorporate this in a way that allows me to move forward into some form of freedom and peace of mind. That is the real challenge. And the repetition aspect of it, the idea that it somehow flashes back so that we can then, somehow master the experience of the thing that outdid our capacity, the trauma experience that outdid our capacity to absorb it when it occurred. It's really the challenge that we're all facing. So I do really wonder if even in the face of this so-called self-described non-connection, if healing can still get a fertile ground to grow from.
I want to underline that thing you just said, because something in me just released at that phrase. It's a trauma that and I can't even say it now. It outdid our capacity to absorb it when it occurred.
Exactly.
So
that's exactly.
There are things that I can absorb now that I couldn't before. But to relate to it like it wasn't a true evil that occurred, or it was simply something that outmatched my ability to absorb that experience when it occurred.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh yeah. I mean, for sure. I couldn't process that. Like, and I've got that specifically in mind.
Sure.
I'm really clear I couldn't process that. I'm still dealing with the impact of failing to process that 20 years later. But right. I bet if I wound up in a similar situation today, I'd process that a lot better.
Isn't that interesting?
And that tentatively feels like a victory.
Dude, it's
in this moment, right? So, not that there's something wrong with us or that there was something wrong with us when the thing happened, but something occurred that outmatched our ability to absorb and process it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, and this idea that it reverberates, you're still dealing with your capacity to deal with whatever it is that occurred. It's in that sort of tetany-like repetition, that aspect of repetitively re-experiencing the trauma that is such a central piece of the theoretical underpinnings of what post-traumatic stress disorder or shell shock, which predated post-traumatic stress disorder, takes place. This idea that the unresolved issue keeps coming back. Our dude Sigmund, you called that repetition compulsion. And the idea is you bring back things that are unresolved as a way of trying to master it. That's why it keeps rolling back obsessively. Now, where is our handle on this? I am submitting that this is an inside job, and there are different actions that we can take, including human connection. I think that human connection is at the heart of all healing, including this. But inside the world of meditation, inside the world of gratitude, inside the world of mindfulness, inside the world of oneness, inside the world of spirituality, inside the world of service, inside the world of nature, inside the world of nutrition, inside the world of hydration, inside the world of authentic conversations or create all of these areas. They're internally reinforcing areas that can, in fact, crowd out or at least move it down the list anyways of how I go through life every moment. I have a trauma that's unresolved. I have some early childhood wounds that are unresolved, or maybe they're even from previous lifetimes. They rise to the surface when I have the luxury to allow them to rise to the surface. They don't have to run this show. They don't.
Sure.
They're part of the game. They're part of the game, and they're real, and they're unresolved, and they're deeply painful, and they're profoundly present. No question. But they don't have to rise to the top of who I am, and they don't have to be smushed either. They can be incorporated. It's not a matter of like push them down under the rug, get rid of them, not like that. Like actually incorporate them as part of the whole shebang. Like this life of mine, it's had many dips and turns as yours. Many, many, many. I don't have any recall of 99.5% of all the dips and turns that my life has had. But it has led to this sense of 67 years on the planet with some degree of wisdom or some degree of learning that allows me to know that it's really up to me in some level as to the glasses that I use to see the world in front of me. I get to choose my filter to some degree again, and choose to which things rise to the top. Is that early childhood trauma or any kind of recent adult trauma or any trauma at all? Is it worthy of rising to the top on this occasion in this presentation as I interface with the world or a person as I'm doing right now? If it is, then I can allow it to. Like, if we want to talk specifically about traumas, we could shift this conversation in a moment and both of us could trade traumas for a while. And okay, there's some interesting, almost voyeuristic value to that. I don't know that moves us, either of us, ahead any further for real. I think the theory that catharsis moves us ahead, again, a theory that is not always very well proven. What's really is well proven is that love and connection are what we're all after, and the level of magic healing that takes place in that setting is indescribable.
You mentioned like what you allow to arise, and you and I shared some background and some tools in that arena, and I still find that often I have no choice in what arises.
That's right.
It's really just being willing to, while I'm like raging red-sided like monster, in an instant, to also be an observer and be like, oh shit, not good. That's not good. Let's not give voice to that like disproportionate rage.
Yeah.
Let's choose different words. Let's take a moment to breathe. Let's go do a thing. Let's remember that we are all just people doing the best we can do in any given instant. Nobody's like maliciously trying to like wreck the universe. Like, we couldn't wreck the universe if we tried. It's so big, we're so small. Like, there's so many approaches to like, hang on a second, right? And I hear conversations about how, there you can just choose who to be in a moment. And what fails to get said most of the time, in my experience, is that only functions as an interruption of who you're already being. Like, we can choose to interrupt who we are right now with a chosen perspective, but it's the thing that rises from the depths without conscious summoning that that we tend to be grappling. We feel like we're grappling with, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I don't relive my incident, right? Like, it's not often that I have a gun pointed at someone, ready and willing to pull the trigger and end a life. I don't relive that in my grocery shopping. I don't relive that when some customer at Starbucks like bees an asshole, right? I like, it's not like, I don't flash back, but there are conditions for life that were formed in that way back then moment. there were views of the world that I didn't even think about. They're like influences that uh until I recognize that I'm influenced by a thing that's completely disconnected, that seems like it doesn't belong in this moment, um, I can't shake the influence. I can only notice something's off and choose a different path.
Yeah.
And I'm out to actually, for myself, like dissolve some of the power of those influences.
Mm.
Like, ooh, how do I recognize the way my view of myself and the world and other people changed? How do I recognize not the impact of the incident itself, but like the way it changed my view of the world,
Hmm.
and then start to like heal those damages.
Yeah. Well, particularly like what you're pointing to here, this idea of what I like to call the first thought. I have no access to the first thought. Here it comes. It's just coming. It's it. And the first thought might be just one hellish mofo for sure. It could be like, whoa, that one takes me out. That really happened. That's something I'm really thinking about. That almost happened. Whatever is there. I do, in fact, I do have some agency and some capacity to respond to that thought from a space of me.
Yeah.
There is a capacity for me to counter the thought or deal with or integrate or appreciate or embrace whatever that thought is, terrible or horrible or disempowering as it might be inherently,
Mm.
from a space of who I now know myself to be, one who is affected by one who when left alone is completely affected by my thoughts, feelings, and sensations. Like
Mhm.
if left alone, at the effect of leaf in the river kind of guy.
Yeah.
I'm going down some pretty dark holes here, pretty quickly. But I can also position myself as when and if I identify that as simply an intruding thought or an incoming thought, an incoming feeling, an incoming memory, an incoming sensation, one to which I have a relatively infinite number of possible responses available to me.
Mhm.
It is from that point of sovereignty, post thought,
Yeah.
post first thought. I don't get to filter those first thoughts. I don't get to do that, but I do get to filter at some degree my response to those thoughts, feelings, sensations, emotions, memories, etc.
Yeah. So it's really the power of the second thought.
I think it's the power of the second thought. I really do. That's exactly what I'm saying. Because here come those dudes. And I can be on the lookout for them. I can have my goalie glove up. I can be, I can put up a veil so it doesn't hit me the next time this inevitable blast is coming at me. I can pretend to protect myself from first thoughts by simply trying to cut myself off from any stimulation. That would be one way to do it. That thing was so hellish. I'm not going to put myself in the same time zone as that ever again.
Mm-hmm.
I could pretend to protect myself by not interacting because interacting is what hurt me last time. I could pretend to protect myself by not exposing my heart because last time I did, someone sliced it.
Yeah.
I can pretend to protect myself from the experience of the inevitable upcoming trauma as proven by past experience by simply not going up that ladder, by simply not taking the risk of being with others, of falling in love, of caring about anything, of having a delicate, having a delicate self-image, the idea that I can be kind and gentle and safe. There are some situations where I've been forced to be none of those things.
Yeah.
Not kind, not gentle, and not safe, where I have chosen paths that have made me, at least for that time, be ungentle, unkind, and unsafe, as a way of dealing with the world coming at me. And so I'm not undefeated, and neither are you, and neither is anyone. It's not, I do my very best on that second thought and how to step in. And my submission at this moment is that the route to that comes from the ancient arts. It comes from meditation. It comes from gratitude. It comes from Tai Chi, yoga. It comes from the unifying principles of non-combative martial arts, for instance. And in that process, I then get to see that I'm over here having thoughts, having feelings, having sensations, having memories, having desires, having emotions, having fears, having regrets, having resentment. I have all of those. I don't have to, if I stay in mastery of this self of mine, I don't have to collapse myself or conflate myself on top of those things and become them, even as inviting as they are, for me to actually buy them as truth.
And I would almost go so far as to say losing myself in them.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is where you and I have had some of our really most amazing conversations, because I did the non-professional, non-medicated healing journey for 20 plus years. And then at some point I found myself just exhausted. I was just fucking tired of having to always be ready and watchful for the first thoughts that I spend all day setting aside. And tying back to, how we have a tendency to want an ultimate solution, right? And very often medication is treated like it's an ultimate solution. If you just medicate the crap out of that trauma, maybe it won't surface anymore. You'll have a life where you don't relive that, but that has so many impacts, so many side effects, so much else gets lost when medication is treated as the solution. And I came to you after I started medication, remembering that you're the non-medicating psychiatrist. And we had this chat because I found that, I started on low doses. I haven't upped those doses in over a year, but they gave me enough space, enough relief from the impact of the first thought to better choose my second thought. It wasn't as heavy of combat internally to meet the first thought, choose the second. The first thought was a little quieter instead of being a roaring beast. It's oh, you're an angry kitty. Okay. We're just going to pick you up by the scruff and put you over here instead of having to fight the lion off with a chair. There's what I've heard thread through this whole conversation is that it's the variety and the frequency of engaging in healing, that it's not just a therapist, it's not just medication, it's not just one person you can talk to, it's not just one huge aha moment and then it's all done. It's the constant and varied engagement in listening to ourselves, finding those moments, and taking another step up that mountain with no top. We're never gonna not have that thing that happened. It doesn't get suctioned out of our spirit. It lives there, and it's meeting those traces of it that arise in the present with something, some tool, and the more variety and the quantity and quality of access points we have to relief, to returning to like a sense of being like regulated and in control rather than overtaken. The that if it's like book a massage, if it's like engage in martial arts and like find that mental space. Like I when I really just can't anymore, I run. I was a runner, like I don't know, I was like track, cross country, whatever, like high school. I trained for marathons when I lived in San Francisco. There's something in running where there's a like a zen,
Yeah.
like just returning to something that lets you step back into yourself instead of into that initial response.
Yeah.
And so, for the folks who grapple with medication, like perhaps the medication isn't what needs adjusted. Perhaps it is, but are you meeting your medication with at least as much effort in like having conversations? I know that I'm my most depressed my second day off work,
Yeah.
when I have not left the house and nobody's fussing with me and nobody needs anything from me and I'm not responding to anything other than myself. That second day is brutal. And doesn't that suck? Because that should be like the best day. But I don't know. That's the way it is. And just knowing that, like, I can choose to do something else, right?
Yeah, you bring up some really great points here. So, the variety, and so it's true. I don't incorporate medication as I would say almost as a rule. I don't incorporate medication as another potential tool very often. And although I do understand entirely what you're saying and have heard and even dealt with this theory, and for sure I medicate some people still, despite the fact that I've taken on the approach of being the undoctor and undiagnosing, unmedicating, and undoctrinating people. So one of the things that's here inside of this medication realm is that although it decreases the intensity of that experience, one of the things we often overlook that medicine seems to also do is decrease the intensity of lots of experiences such that you don't even notice that you're losing the edge in multiple. So you don't have capacity to what you no longer see. You don't have access to what you no longer see. Just same way as my hearing aids. I don't know what I'm not hearing. I have no idea what I'm not hearing.
Yeah.
How could I know? How can I know? I don't. It's just gone. It's just not there. So one of the ways that this medication works, and I think that the manufacturers would say this as well in most cases, if they were being honest, and Lord knows, putting pharmacological manufacturers with the word honesty is a whole conversation in and of itself. But is that it blankets your capacity to have all emotions, including the ones that are traumatic. So it smothers in some ways your capacity to feel the peaks and troughs of what it really means to have a full experience. There is no particular line of thought that is only aimed at the traumatic component of your little brain.
Yeah.
Wow. It's actually a line of thought that smothers out an entire strata. And when it does that, because we've been so myopic, rightfully myopic, to look for whether or not the trauma is released, we then are able to say, my trauma, my response to trauma, that's what I've been caring about. It's no longer hitting me at the level it used to. So I can now move forward from being less like, less rattled, less tattered, less incapacitated.
And I feel like that's the answer, but really that's where the work begins.
But you see,
because from there, I have to work on building habits for happiness. I have to like build capacity. Like, if I don't take that opportunity to strengthen what needs strengthening, that's all been dedicated to trauma response previously, and I just coast on relief from trauma instead of building what's been missing, I lose the opportunity.
Exactly. So Brian, this is why we connect more than anything, I think. I mean, it is in that commitment, that declaration, that dedication that urgency, that responsibility, that accountability that you just stated that separates you from most. So what's really here, is that what if these medications also wash out your capacity to see the value of doing exactly what you're talking about? What if it also does that? Like left alone, you no longer are drawn towards spiritual growth. You're no longer charged with unifying your mind, body, and mind, body, and soul. Like that's like, what if these medicines also wash away the interest in exploring cosmic truths? What if it actually washes away your capacity to fully get the aspect of creativity and reception of visual arts or performing arts? What if that gets washed away in ways, by the way, that from inside the forest, you don't even notice?
Yeah.
What if that's the also included effect of these medications? If it is, I'm no longer a big fan. I can't be. So I think I've run by the mosquito bite in the elbow before with you and other conversations. Maybe I haven't. So have I not used this analogy?
I don't think so.
But I'm excited to share it with you and your listeners. So you come up to me, you're like, Dr. Fred, man, I have a mosquito bite on my elbow that's just knocking me out. I can't think of anything else. It's such a pain. It keeps me up at night. It's getting worse. I need some help. Do you know anything? I'm like, yeah, as it turns out, I know somebody, this doc in Pasadena, who has a 100% cure rate. And he's an elbow mosquito bite specialist. And I'm going to send you to him. All you have to do is when you get to his door, you let him know that you sent me, that I sent you, and then you'll get top-notch treatment and 100% cure rate. You're like, oh my God, you're exactly who I've been looking for. You're such a gift. And off you go. You make your appointment in Pasadena. A couple of days later, you show up at his office. He meets you at the door. He's got a stethoscope wrapped around his neck. He's wearing a nice white coat with his embroidered name. He's got some fake art around his room. He's got all of his diplomas all over there. He's got a sliding glass door with a beautiful little receptionist back there, computers running. And he's got an office over there and an office over there, one for that purpose, one for that purpose. And he's got a little reflex hammer in his pocket. He's your dude. Got his little glasses halfway down his nose. He's your guy. And you're like, yeah. He goes, oh, you must be Dr. Fred's referral. Yep, that's me. He goes, okay, come on in. Looking forward to meeting you. And he asks you, sit down in his office. He takes a couple questions, demographic questions, of course, like whether your mom had mosquito bites on her elbow or as well. She wants to know if it's a familiar type of mosquito bite. He wants checking all that. And, previous responses to other kind of bites earlier in your life. He wants to know all that, Yeah. Then he sits you down and he asks you to roll up your sleeve. You roll up your sleeve and you show him, like, dude, right here. He takes out his magnifying glass, takes a good peek at it. He's like, Brian, this here is a mosquito bite on your elbow. I'm going to give you that diagnosis. You're like, I know. That's why I'm here. Yeah, I'm looking. I already know that. Thanks for telling me. Yeah. Well, you officially got a mosquito bite on your elbow. The good news is I got a 100% cure rate. You're like, that's all I really wanted. That's so great. He goes, okay, well, here's what we're going to do. And he says that famous doctor line, it's only going to hurt for a minute. He takes out a buzzsaw and cuts off your arm at the shoulder. And he says, come back in 2 weeks. We'll take another look at it, make sure that we got the whole thing.
Yep.
2 weeks come by, you show up, 100% cure rate. You don't have a mosquito bite. And if you stay focused on whether or not your mosquito bite is gone, you'll be really happy with that treatment.
Yeah.
Because you didn't even think that the treatment might have caused an additional set of traumatic experiences.
Yeah.
Such as the fact that you don't have an elbow, you don't even have an arm, you don't even have a hand. But you missed that in the process by getting that, well, at least I don't have to scratch my freaking elbow all night long.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
There is something, really important in assessing, so trauma has all these echoes and impacts and lingering effects and traces.
It does.
So does medication. So does meditation. So does your like conversations with your family. So does, you know, the way your body moves at work. So does hydration. So does nutrition. Like those, you start trying to eat nutritious and then all of a sudden you're having weird reactions and rashes and stuff. It's like, well, you're doing the right thing, but you've discovered something else along the way, or you've cut something out and now you have to suffer through cravings for all the sugar that you're no longer eating. Isn't it miserable? There are impacts to every solution.
Yeah.
And if we aren't on the lookout for, what do we need as whole people? Like there's a whole person over here, not just a trauma.
Okay.
And that medication is going in my whole body.
Yeah.
It's not just like riding in a taxi through my blood to the trauma and then zapping it with a little ray gun.
Exactly.
Right? So the trap of like magical solutions, like the one thing cures all, like the final answer. The trap is what we lose if all we do is take what the therapist said and run with it at 1,000%. You miss everything that the therapist isn't addressing. You miss the things that are arising that don't fall inside that worldview. I've watched my dad medicate into a zombie. Like the VA just nuked him with stuff. Thank God that's not what they tried to do to me, right? But that was 20 years ago. And this is now. Like we're more educated and like the medical field has progressed. We'll just say that much. It's progressed. um, but
if regression is a form of progression, I can agree with you.
All right. I mean, they had him on like lithium and all sorts of stuff. And just there was, like you said, there was just nothing behind his eyes.
Yeah.
You know, there's something important in like being an advocate for our own healing.
Yeah.
Like watching and listening rather than just waiting for the healing to be done to us by some magical conversation, medication, or procedure. Like the CPT didn't end the way that trauma shows up in my world.
Right.
But it gave me another tool. It gave me another set of perspectives to like soften the impact, to like see, hey, does this feel like one of those things that I want to sit down and fill out this tool?
Yeah.
Do I need to journal this? Or can I just let this one go? Right. But I've got another option. Like, and taking the relief that a particular, we'll say, treatment, whatever that treatment is, if it's martial arts or talking to Dr. Fred, taking that relief and using it to look further rather than to take my foot off the gas.
Yeah.
It's a lifelong pursuit.
It is. It's a lifelong pursuit. And, the trauma, the perception of relief. I have another doctor friend that he's one of the very few psychiatrists that are still around, for which I just admire at high levels. Mm. And he's a friend of mine. He lives about 30 miles down the road. And he runs an adolescent outpatient sort of partial hospital / residential place. And he uses low dose medications for the exact purpose that you're describing of. And, it seems it's great that he and I have these great conversations when we're on this boat and stuff, and about what the real value is of that. And, it's not like I'm not in a hurry to use that approach with medications, because I don't know, I've written over 100,000 duplicitous prescriptions in my life. And they're duplicitous because each one of them comes with a zing, like, shit, man, this person's actually going to take this because I said so. I don't really like that idea very much.
Yeah.
And I've written that over 100,000 is a fair estimate of how many prescriptions I've written in my life. And so it's not, I it's not that the medications are evil. It's that the effects that they have are unknown by most people, certainly by the doctors who are prescribing them. And in most cases, doctors who are prescribing them would never, ever consider taking the medicines that they're prescribing. That says something. And you see, I'm going to actually submit again here that it is in conversations like this, it is in you and me clicking for which healing takes place, not just for you, the over traumatized, or you, the self-proclaimed traumatized, or you, the excessively traumatized, but for both of us and our world. So not that it's a two-way street. It's a thing. It's like love is. It's like healing is. It's like, I don't get to heal you. You don't get to heal me. We get to heal together. There's that inside of a resonating conversation. And in that process of walking away or walking through this, or in this case, being viewed by others who are curious about this oh so fascinating conversation that we're having, we get to heal others in that process by showing the space of what the route to healing could be. So we might notice, both of us might notice, and it's fair to say that although you came fairly close to talking about the actual details of the thing, the big trauma that you have there, we didn't have to splay it open in this conversation. We could, if we want to do it right now, we could do it, but it's not, the value is not doing that in the same way that my host of early childhood unresolved traumas did not have to get listed for this conversation. And yet in the power of this exchange, the depth of healing that gets made available by connecting with another human who has many of those same characteristics that I have, that I listed earlier about being a human, being a citizen, being a brother, being a dad, being a husband, being a father, being a doctor or a healer. We have in the depth of the absorption or the intrusion of the healing that we've created for each other, with each other here and now in this conversation. If there was any medicine that I could give someone that would create this outcome that me and you are having right this very second, I'd be down with it.
Yeah.
I'd be like loading it up. I'd be giving away samples at the corner.
Yeah.
This effect could take place by eating a pill and not having conversations. I am the number one proponent for that drug.
Yeah.
It's not about drugs. It's about the fact that the shit doesn't create this.
Yeah. When you look back at ancient cultures, this is what happened. When like an atrocity occurred. This is what happened when someone did something like vicious in a community. There was a sit down. There was a communal togethering.
Yeah. To
have that person be understood and whatever was not okay get recognized and healed and brought back into the fold as a human being. And in the West we don't have time for that.
No, we don't.
I got time for that. We don't even really value it.
No, I got to check if my post yesterday got the number of likes that I wanted.
Yeah.
I need to hurry up and get that done actually right now. So might have to end this podcast. I'm interested.
Well, it's a good note. I think we've covered a lot of ground. I'd love to have you back and have some more conversations. And I just really value your friendship and your perspective on all of this. Anything you want to say in closing, or anything you want to offer for our listeners?
Yeah. So first of all, of course, I value our friendship a lot. I love you dearly, and I appreciate wherever we go. It seems like put us two in a conversation, and just like we get to observe and appreciate ourselves as fans for the conversation that gets created by us. That's kind of fun. That's certainly where I stand with our conversations. And for the listeners, when asked frequently at podcasts, like, what is it, the one thing I want to tell the listeners, over like at the edge, at the end, and it is something like, there really may be nothing wrong with you. There literally may be nothing wrong with you. Even if you've been saddled with some sort of diagnosis by somebody who thinks they know what they're talking about when they gave it to you, and that you agreed to take on that diagnosis, there literally might be nothing wrong with you. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not uncomfortable. That doesn't mean that you're not out of balance. That doesn't mean you're not forlorn. That doesn't mean you're not even hopeless. Like, all those things are part of the human experience, the smorgasbord of what it means to be human. So if you can give yourself the compassion, the acceptance, and the forgiveness to allow yourself to be you, managing a world that is thoroughly and totally impossible to manage, and just realize that that's a world out there that's thoroughly and totally impossible to manage. And you're doing what you can, and you're not doing what you're not doing, and you're making mistakes, and you're hurting people inadvertently or even maybe intentionally at times. That's just you being you. So the possibility of there being nothing wrong with you is a good place to start. That's really what we're here. So yeah, and then when really looking at what's really here, the undoctor approach is something that I'm teaching people. And so the idea of coming to talk to me and seeing where you fit in on this whole idea of how to become a healer without a license. How can you actually step into who you really are and be a healer for yourself, but a healer for others? So the undoctor experience is one way to do that. We're creating a whole movement here. We're creating a support group. We likely have a retreat around the corner, and maybe down the road, even an undoctoring center where I'm looking for some people who want to step into being a healer without having to go through the expensive, time-consuming, and relatively ineffective approach of getting a formal degree, because you have everything it takes to be a profound healer just like you are. The way to get a hold of me is to go to Dr. Fred, drfred360.com, drfred360.com. And that'll be a space where we can set up a one-to-one or set up a conversation to see what your desires are, how that you can help yourself or your loved ones, the ones you're caring for. And it would be my honor and pleasure to have a conversation, hear what your specific concerns are, what your specific directions are, and maybe set you in a space of becoming that healer you already know you are, or you already know you need, because you already have all the tools.
Great. Thanks so much, Fred.